Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today for our webinar, Child Care Search Tool, Key Components of Your Consumer Education Website. We would just like to go over a few housekeeping. The first is that this is being recorded. Secondly, we would like to bring attention to the chat box right below the video panel. You can feel free to type in any comments or questions or answers to questions that we might have throughout this presentation. And then just so you know, Studio is customizable, and if you were to maximize the video or the panels, you can easily reset the settings with the first arrow that you see at the bottom with like the blue icons. And with that, I would like to turn it over to Amy so she can get this started.
Great. Thanks so much, Caroline. Welcome, everyone. We are glad you could join us today for our webinar about child care search tools and the critical role they play as a component of your consumer education website. My name is Amy Page. I'm an early childhood systems consultant with the Intensive Technical Assistance Team at the Child Care State Capacity Building Center. I'm joining today from my home office in North Georgia. I'm very fortunate to have my colleague Mel Banks, a Consumer Education Intensive Technical Assistance Specialist, also with the Intensive Technical Assistance Team at SCBC, joining me to present today's webinar. She is joining from Kentucky, and you'll hear from her in just a short while. Supporting the webinar today are Karen Ruprecht and Christina Powers, who are also part of our SCBC Intensive TA team. You already heard from Caroline, who is providing our technical support and making the magic happen with the technology today. We certainly appreciate her efforts in preparing for today's session and thank her for her support. Now that you know a little bit about us, we'd like to find out where everyone is calling in from. Please take a moment to type into the chat panel and let us know where you are joining from. Looks like we have some folks calling in from Wisconsin, Nebraska, Tennessee. Great. Another Nebraska and Oklahoma. North Dakota, North Carolina. It looks like we're getting the country covered. Great. We're so glad that everybody could be with us today. South Dakota and Tennessee. New York. Great. Oh, there's Delaware and New Jersey and Texas. Washington. Great. From the Indian tribe. Wonderful. Again, we're so thankful that all of you could be with us today, and thanks so much for sharing. We also want to take just a quick moment to find out a little bit more about what your role is. And so on this next slide, please select the role that fits you best from the options that you see displayed there. If there's one that doesn't fit you to a T, you're welcome to click Other and then just let us know in the chat box what your role is. As you can see, in just a moment, we'll take a look at the results. It looks like we are winding down on everybody logging those. Great. Okay. For those of you that were able to join in, I saw that you can see here that a good many of you are state government professionals. And we have a few training and technical assistance professionals with us as well. And then quite a few of you typed into the chat box. It looks like we have quite a few child care resource and referral folks and some additional CCDF administrators as well, community outreach specialists. Great, a software vendor building a site. Welcome. And then someone, too, also involved from preschool and development grant Birth to 5. Great, contractors. Again, we're just appreciate everybody responding to the poll and are grateful that you all are joining us today. Our goal for today's session is to provide information that meets the following objectives. First, we'll take a look at how a child care search tool serves as a critical component of your consumer education websites by providing helpful child care information to families while also meeting a key child care and development fund requirement. We also will talk about how states and territories can go about developing an effective child care search tool that meets their families' needs, as there are a number of different ways that can be accomplished. It is important that jurisdictions consider how their child care search tool can best meet the needs of the families they serve. It is essential to make sure that adequate research and planning goes into all of the stages of its development and implementation efforts. Mel will share key implementation considerations for enhancing your child care search. Then, toward the end of our time together, we'll take a look at some helpful resources that will support enhancement efforts you may be considering. So with that, let's get started. As we begin, we are reminded that effective child care consumer education websites ensure that information about child care is easily accessible and transparent, providing families with information they need to make informed child care decisions and engage in the development of their children, both at home as well as in child care settings. It's important to remember that there are several key components that support an effective consumer education website, each of which provides valuable information to the families you serve. And just to point out that a child care search tool is just one of those core pieces. CCDF requirements form the foundation of your consumer education website and provide a strong base from which you can pursue continuous improvement and add features that will enhance your website, making it more useful for families, providers, and other stakeholders. We will have a short review of the CCDF requirements related to consumer education in just a little while. Better serve your audience, you want to be sure you are thinking about how your consumer education website can move beyond compliance with the requirements and toward continuous improvement in order to help families better understand the full range of child care options and resources available to them. I really don't think we can stress enough how vital that piece is to make sure your primary audience, the families, are equipped to make informed decisions about the care they are seeking for their children. As I just mentioned, your child care search tool is one of the core elements of your consumer education website. As such, you'll want to continually explore how you can improve how your search tool provides families with easy access to useful, accurate, and understandable information that helps them search for, identify, and choose child care that meets their needs. At the end of the day, we all want our consumer education websites to be effective. By providing well-organized, timely, accurate, and easy to understand information, you will strengthen your website's credibility with your audience. When you build this trust, families will see it as the go-to child care resource for your jurisdiction. So as we walk through ways to enhance your child care search tool, we hope that the information shared will jumpstart some ideas about how you can improve the website experience for your target audiences, like parents and providers, so that they can more easily find answers to their child care questions. As we've established, the child care search tool is a key component of your child care consumer education website that families regularly visit and probably the component that they use the most often. An effective, easy-to-use child care search will not only help families find the child care they need, but it will also help them make informed child care choices. If families find your child care search tool useful and informative, it will help build awareness for your website and strengthen your audience's confidence in its content. This will help families recognize it as the trusted source of child care information. In summary, there are two key things that your child care search tool should do. The first thing, of course, is the most obvious. It needs to serve as a reliable tool by which families can search for potential child care options in their community that best fits their specific needs. And it should also deliver program information to help those families make the most thoughtful decisions about which care providers to consider. In this next section, we really would like to take some time to discuss how potential enhancements to your child care search tool will help you achieve the goals that we just presented. We're going to start off here, and really the key question to ask yourself and your team is, How do you help families search for child care programs that meet their specific child care needs and also provide program-level information that will help them inform their choices? The graphic that you see here walks through 3 steps to do just that. First, you can build out a comprehensive search tool by enhancing the search criteria that is available. The only CCDF requirement is a zip code-based search, but it's important to think about what other care information might help families identify child care that meets their needs. It is also helpful to consider how you can refine the search results display. Be sure to think about how you can display the results of a search in a way that's easy to scan and really highlights key information for families so that they can readily find the information that they are looking for. Displaying detailed provider profiles can really take your child care search tool to the next level by providing detailed program information that families can use to inform their child care choices. Also consider how your other CCDF requirements, such as monitoring inspections and quality rating information, can be integrated either into the search results or on potential provider profile views. Next, we'll explore each element of an enhanced search tool. As we said, the first step was to make sure that you're identifying useful search criteria. To help families find child care that meets their specific needs, you should consider including search criteria that will help families refine their child care search. Displayed here is a list of program-level information or criteria that may help families narrow down their search results so that they may more easily identify programs that meet their specific care needs. You can see that the possible criteria goes well beyond program location and type. Other criteria such as QRIS rating information, financial assistance options, and specialized services allow families to customize their search results. One great tip is to be sure that you're using dynamic search filters. You can make child care search filters dynamic so that families can choose more than one item from a search category. That feature really offers families the most flexibility in their search. For example, if a family needs care for an infant and a preschool child, a dynamic search filter will allow them to select both infant and preschool so that they can conduct one search for both children. There are also a variety of other variables that dynamic search filters will allow families to take a look at, such as if they are looking for before or after school care for a school-age child only. That might be an option, and that would tie into the days and hours of operation, or if maybe they're looking just for summer care. If there's multiple options in your yearly schedule, a dynamic search filter would allow them to select and look for more than one criteria at any given time within a search. Take just a moment, if you will, to reflect on the list of criteria that we just discussed, and I want you to think about if there are any that maybe your current child care search tool doesn't have currently, and what ones you might think would be most helpful to include. As you think about that, just take a quick moment to drop those responses in the chat box. Looks like a good many of you that are calling in from the States. Okay, provider prices, great. A lot of you may have a lot of the different search criteria already, which is great. Okay. The financial assistance piece as well, great. Thanks for responding. The rating system as well, good. I'm glad that that list sparked some ideas about some different criteria and filters that you may be able to have in place to help your families kind of customize their search, because that is very, very helpful. Wonderful. Looks like we've got a few more popping into the chat box that you can see there to the left side of your slide. Great, thanks. Okay. As we go on to think about how you can set up and display your search results, you really want to think about what a family sees that once they've entered their search criteria and have selected the search button. They should really then be able to view their child care search results in a easily readable and clean format. They should be very easy to scan. It's helpful to display the results in both a map and a list format. A list can be especially useful if families can sort by key criteria. For example, if they're looking for providers that are only a particular QRIS rating, or if they're looking for a provider that is close in proximity to their work location. If they can sort the criteria that way, that makes it even more user-friendly for them. The map is helpful because it allows families to see where providers are located. It should include a pin or a marker. You've probably seen them many times on different map software that points out where each provider is located that met the search criteria. It's helpful to allow families to see some basic provider information also when they hover over or select a pin on the map. That can include the provider's name, their address, and potentially their QRIS rating, or even an icon or visual that lets them know what the rating for that program is. Also consider displaying key summary information on the list and the map. That will help families narrow down their search results. Additional items to display would include not only the provider name, but also the address and phone number, potentially the ages that they serve or the age range that they serve, any quality rating information, and it could have a link or a tab to their detailed provider profile, and then possibly even an indication of provider availability and whether or not they currently have availability. And like we said, the last step or the last component is establishing provider profiles, which really can display more detailed program level information. If the families can access those directly from the search results display, that makes it even more helpful to them. The provider profile can display more provider level information than the map or the list view, and may include information for many of the same research criteria that we mentioned just a little while ago. It's also important to note that there are many ways to integrate and display this information in your child care search tool. Here on the screen, we just presented the information that a provider profile could include, but it certainly would not have to be limited to just the options displayed here. As you can see, a couple of the additional ones that we haven't talked about at this point would include whether or not there are a variety of languages spoken at the program. And then I think many of the others that are noted there are some that we've kind of talked a little bit about as we've looked at the criteria. One other component would be additional services that the program might provide, such as transportation or drop-in care. It could be transportation to and from home, which might be a separate criteria from transportation to and from local elementary schools for before and after care. So there are quite a variety of different levels and detail of information that the profile could include that really is going to give the parents a great deal of information to consider when selecting what programs to look into a little bit more closely for their care needs. Okay. Here on the screen, back one. Here on the screen you see an infographic for the consumer education website requirements, and it is I think we're going to try to show a live screen share. It looks like it's coming up right now. Great. It's awfully hard to see the one that was on the screen, so we're going to look a little more closely and zoom in a little bit so you can see the information that's shared there. Many of you may have seen this consumer education website requirement infographic before. It's a handout that was developed to kind of outline what all of the requirements are. And you can see there on the front page, it lists requirements based on state-level information and provider-level information. We want to take just a moment to review these requirements, and keep in mind as we do so, though, that these are for the whole consumer education website, not just the search tool component. Of course, one of the things that state and territories are required to make available is a variety of consumer education materials, including the results of monitoring and inspection reports, and making them available by an electronic means. For that particular provision, electronic means refers to a consumer-friendly and easily accessible website. While states and territories do have the flexibility on the look or design of the website, the law and final rule defined required and recommended elements of the consumer education. And as I mentioned, the portion that we're looking at right now on the left-hand side provides a visual for understanding what the website must contain for content, the screen. And in a moment, we'll look at the back side, which is related to recommendations. The state-level consumer education requirements include information regarding contact information for child care resource and referral agencies. Also includes licensing and monitoring inspection policies and processes. That includes policies and processes for criminal background checks, including an explanation of the offenses that would keep a provider from being allowed to care for children. The next requirement is for contact information for the lead agency or designee. And really what it's looking for there is the entity that can help with the understanding of the website, including the contact information for the hotline to report complaints. The final three state-level requirements are for aggregate data related to deaths in child care settings, injuries in child care settings, and then finally child abuse cases in child care settings. The aggregate information on serious injuries and deaths must be organized by category of care or provider type, such as center-based programs or family child care, and licensing status for all eligible CCDF provider categories in the state. And typically, this aggregate report data should not list individual provider-specific information or names. And so those are the first six that you see there under the state-level requirements. And then in the kind of orange color under the provider-level requirements, that information includes a zip code search for available care, which results in a localized list of all licensed providers. So that's that component is the child care search tool that we've been discussing and that we're really focusing on during today's webinar. Also require the results of the monitoring and inspection reports for required annual monitoring visits and also any visits due to major substantiated complaints. The report or summary must include the health and safety violations, any serious injuries or deaths that occurred at the provider's site. It's important to note that the reports have to be in easy-to-understand language and be timely to ensure that the results of the reports are available and easily understood by the parents when they are deciding on a child care provider. Lead agencies also must post at least 3 years of reports when available. The final few areas of information for the provider level would be any quality rating information, if it is available, or other quality indicator information, 3 years of monitoring data, as I just mentioned, and the date of last inspection for providers, and finally, any corrective actions as those are applicable. Lead agencies must ensure also that the required consumer education components are located, again, on a consumer-friendly and easily accessible website, and they ensure the widest possible access to services for families who speak languages other than English. You can see those there down along the bottom as 1, 2, and 3. They also need to ensure the widest possible access to services for persons with disabilities. And there are resources available on our consumer education resource page, which we will be reviewing later on, that will really help clarify many of the accessibility parameters for you. There are many website attributes that are best practices. A few of those that you may want to consider, of course, are limiting the number of websites that families actually have to visit in order to find this information, and minimizing the number of navigation clicks it takes to get to the key information. Another recommendation would be to have an easy-to-recall site name, something that really kind of stands out that is catchy that families can remember and lends itself to creating branding options. Also ensure that you are posting content that is at an 8th grade reading level or below. Okay. And as we scroll down and see the next part of the infographic, it lists recommendations for other types of state-level information that can be provided to consumers, such as child care assistance information, along with other types of assistance that a family may qualify for, such as WIC or TANF, child development information that can provide families with valuable information related to their child's growth and development, as well as information on developmental screening. The graphic at the middle of this page reinforces the key audiences for consumer education websites, which are families, providers, and the general public. Many resources are available, and some are listed on this document, and others we will share information for later on. One thing to think about when you post your licensing information reports, you can integrate other requirement information. For example, number 2 that we talked about, which required information about your licensing and monitoring process. You could have pop-up or hover boxes with information that clearly outlines the types of providers that are licensed, information about the requirements and process, along with how often regulatory staff monitor the child care programs. There are certainly many possibilities for areas you can blend the recommendations with the requirements. Most of you are probably really familiar with these requirements. Again, we want you to think above and beyond the requirements and think about what families need and are looking for as they visit your consumer education website. Two of the key items that we just reviewed as CCDF requirements included the posting of quality rating or QRIS information, as well as inspection and monitoring reports for providers to include routine monitoring and substantiating complaints, any corrective actions, and serious health and safety violations as well. Those requirements could easily be tied into your child care search tool results or provider profiles, making it much easier for families to access and use the information when assessing their child care choices. In thinking about that, a provider profile page is really an optimal location to include that information. A provider profile page can really serve as a virtual one-stop shop, if you will, for all things related to a specific child care provider. Some states and territories choose to have components of a provider profile page that can be updated and maintained by the program itself using a provider self-serve portal system or other data collection sources. A detailed provider profile really can help families develop a fuller picture of a given program. Once again, when you integrate these requirements directly in the child care search results or provider profile, families can use that information to inform their child care choices. And again, I don't think that we can really reiterate that point enough, that how important it is that we provide as much detail and as much information in an easy-to-use format so that they can make the best informed decisions. I want to talk just a little bit about the ways to optimize utility and visibility. In thinking about that, in order to strengthen the utility and visibility of your search, you also want to consider how and when to address some of these questions. The first question that you would want to pose is, how does the design of your child care search feature and search results page help families search for child care? When families search for child care, you want to make sure that you're making it easy for them to read and print out the search results. You also want to think about making sure that the look of your space includes white space. You want to be able to check for accessibility and make sure that your website is mobile friendly so that parents can access the information from their cell phones or tablets. Also make sure that families can find the search tool on your consumer education website. You should include a link, a button, or an icon for the search tool that is consistent on each page of your website in order to make it visible and accessible from any page. That really just allows families a way to kind of navigate back and start over on a search, no matter where they kind of end up as they kind of follow the bread trail, if you will, as they click and navigate through your consumer education website. You also want to think about how your search tool can be more helpful during emergencies. You want your audience to be able to count on your consumer education website and your search tool to provide critical child care information no matter the circumstances. I think that many states and jurisdictions experienced this recently and made adaptations to their consumer education websites. Doing that will help bolster credibility for your search tool and overall consumer education website as the trusted source of child care information in your jurisdiction. During an emergency, your child care search tool should be the search of record in your jurisdiction. You want to consider how your child care search tool can be leveraged during emergencies in order so that you can share urgent child care information with families and providers. Some of the different things you could consider would be whether or not if you could easily exclude providers who close because of an emergency from the active search. It's best to differentiate an emergency closure from providers who voluntarily choose to close when their business during non-emergencies, and those who are mandated to close because of serious health and safety violations. So you want to think about whether or not you have a way to collect that information quickly and easily. Another question to consider is whether or not you could add a field that would allow you to identify programs that are approved to provide emergency care. Can you easily limit your active search to only those approved providers during an emergency? Really, including some of these features in your child care search tool will help you strengthen your communication system with families and providers. It will also help minimize any confusion and eliminate the need for duplicated efforts to help identify the status of child care providers during emergencies and disasters. Another important feature to think about is to determine whether or not families can find your search tool easily when they conduct just in a general online search. So if they're using, Google or some other search engine, you want to make sure that they are able to readily find and access your search tool. Search engines have really become a part of our daily life. They serve millions of users each day who are looking to find information or resources quickly. So you want to be sure that your audience can find your website and child care search tool when using a search engine. That is really critically essential that they are able to do so. You can do that by doing what we call search engine optimization, or SEO. It helps increase the visibility of your website and ensures that people can find it more readily when they use the search engine. SEO increases the likelihood that search engines will do two things, really. The first is they will match your website to a user's online search criteria, and second, they'll rank your website content higher than others on search engine results pages. So in other words, you want to be sure to increase your search engine optimization to ensure your audience can easily find your website online. Accordingly, be sure that your consumer education website and child care search page leverage search engine optimization. We're going to go ahead and go forward, and would just like for you all to reflect for just a moment on all of the different enhancements that we've talked about so far, and think about what type of enhancements you would like to consider to making to your child care search tool. And as you think about this, we really want you to answer as if you had unlimited resources to do whatever may be on your wish list. In other words, dream big. After you've had a moment to reflect, we're going to pause. Just please share your thoughts in the chat box. I realized, too, that was a lot of information pretty quickly. So some of the things that would be potential enhancements that you might not have right now would be detailed provider profile pages. There could be other information related to additional criteria or search features. So if there was anything in our examples that sparked your imagination, looks like we have a response related to provider prices and more timely vacancy information. Great. One of the resources that we will be posting soon actually has some more information about provider self-serve portals that can help support that data being updated in timely manner. Okay. Another participant responded that it would be helpful for their search tool to feel more intuitive, almost like a travel website, yes. Okay, great. We realize that not all jurisdictions have the resources available to make a lot of enhancements, but there's certainly things that you want to kind of keep in mind and think about for down the road. An integration with Google Maps so that parents can do the on the route and plan their routes. That's good as well. Someone else mentioned too how to deal with photos, but also data privacy. A lot of good thoughts and considerations. Thanks for sharing. Building out provider profiles with special needs, languages served, environmental. Great, good. So it looks like we've given you some food for thought, and we hope that all of these ideal things that you would like to enhance your child care search tool with will be able to be made a reality for you in your jurisdiction. It looks like we don't have any other chats coming in right now, so at this time I'd like to turn it over to Mel, who's going to share with us some key considerations to keep in mind related to your child care search. Mel?
Thank you, Amy. Now that we've had a chance to review some of the elements that you might consider for enhancement for your child care search tool, we want to talk a little bit about the structure of your child care search tool and your consumer education website and how this may inform which enhancements you choose to adopt. So every jurisdiction, be it state, territory, or tribe, is different, and you all might have your own strengths and challenges and contexts that you need to work within. There's no one-size-fits-all approach to enhancing your child care search tool to better meet the needs of your family. There are many ways to improve your child care search regardless of the scale of the changes that you make. When considering enhancements to your search tool, you do want to consider what is possible within the context of your jurisdiction. For instance, each jurisdiction currently has a website structure from which you manage your consumer education website and the associated child care search tool. It's helpful for you to consider this structure along with its associated web management practices, your level of access to make changes, and your available web support when you're identifying and prioritizing which enhancements you'd like to make. So in the next couple of slides, we're going to look at search tools that work within an existing government site and a search tool that is housed within an independent site, and talk a little bit about the challenges or the benefits of either approach. And then we're going to talk about the considerations that you may have if you're in a small jurisdiction that serves maybe less than 200 providers. So here we have an example of a jurisdiction who has integrated their child care search into their existing State Department website. When your consumer education website is housed within a departmental website, there are specific things you have to consider. For instance, you may have to work within specific design parameters based on the overall theme of the site or restrictions on the number of pages or tabs allowed by your IT department. Amy mentioned earlier thinking about a creative name for your site that families can remember, and you may have restrictions on that if you're nested within for the URL for your site within a government site. When you're working within an existing government site, it can be more cost effective and may have a faster turnaround time because you're dealing with internal IT support and you may have a direct line to that support network or direct decision-making authority. It may also simplify your data governance process if all of your data systems are kept in-house and they can easily communicate with each other. This system might be limited by the capacity and technology capabilities of your jurisdiction's IT department or direct access to your IT department as well. So as another example, here we have a freestanding and independent site. So this structure will often have more flexibility in design than a search tool housed within an existing government site. Independently designed sites may be specially built by a contracted vendor or could be a pre-designed product that's customized to fit specifically the needs of your jurisdiction. With independent sites, the sky might be the limit on the number of enhancements you can adopt, but they often come with a higher price tag. This approach will also require new contracts and data sharing agreements in order to allow your internal data to be ported through an external vendor. Your consumer education website may use a different structure than your child care search tool. So, for example, your consumer education website might be housed within the broader state website system, but the child care search tool could be built by a contracted vendor. Or maybe your consumer education website is managed by a partnering agency, such as a CCR&R, but your child care search tool was built in-house around your internal data systems. When you're considering enhancements, it's important to understand how your search tool is structured and how it relates to the larger consumer education website so that you can understand what implications this might have for the enhancement of your search tool. Now that we've explored the two primary structures of a child care search tool, we want to talk a little bit about small jurisdictions. So if you have a relatively small childcare provider population, and in this case, we're saying less than 200 providers, your website structure and agency resources are clearly different from those that provide or that oversee larger jurisdictions. Put simply, your website may not need a robust childcare search tool. A searchable or sortable list for providers may work just fine. This list could still display key summary information that we highlighted in our previous slides, in the slides about the elements of the robust search tool section. Information like program name, contact information, license number, ages served, the quality rating, those could all be added to a searchable list with filters applied using a tool like a Microsoft or Google spreadsheet, or even a Word or PDF document. If you're in a smaller jurisdiction, consider how some of the best practice elements that we outlined in this presentation could be applied to your searchable list. For instance, you may be able to include a link to each provider's inspection reports directly in the list. You may also be able to include some additional information about childcare services offered, such as ages served, hours of operation, or provide a brief profile on each provider. If you're a small jurisdiction considering this approach, there are some tips to ensure that you meet CCDF requirements, as well as ensure that your list is family friendly. So you do want to make sure that you address CCDF requirements. And for the child care search tool or the searchable list, that basic requirement is to make sure that it's searchable by zip code. But you could also consider, as Amy spoke about earlier when we were talking about integrating other requirements from your consumer education website, think about integrating inspection and monitoring reports or corrective actions or quality ratings. Think about how you integrate with other systems. Can you link to information on licensing and monitoring process directly from your searchable list? Can you include information on resource and referral agencies? Or just general information about childcare that links directly from that list? You want to make sure that your list is easy to search or sort. So this is the more difficult part when you're talking about working within just a spreadsheet or a Word document, and why we don't recommend this approach for jurisdictions that are serving more than 200 providers. These lists can get long, they can get hard to navigate. So you want to think about what information is necessary and pertinent to serving your families, but also think about the way that it's laid out and organized so that families can easily navigate it. It would be helpful to include instructions or guidance on how to search the list. So if you're using drop-down filters on a spreadsheet, or if you're wanting folks to perform a word search in a PDF or Word document, include that in the document itself so families know how to navigate and so it's very clear. Also think about things like how you divide the information. If you're using a spreadsheet and you want folks to be able to search by county or zip code or city or some other search requirement, then each of those will need to be separated into different columns that can be filtered. And then think about what, just like any other childcare search tool that's developed in large or small jurisdictions, think about how families search. So the zip code based search is required, but do you also need to consider things like counties or islands or other geographical locations? Think about the childcare search criteria that are really important to your families, and maybe you put those towards the front of your document or the top of your profile on each provider. There are different ways to make this list work for you that can still be accessible. Just don't forget about that accessibility and ease of use piece. So now that we have reviewed the structures of a child care search tool, and as a reminder, that's the existing government site or an independent site. Small jurisdictions could be housed within either of those structures. We would love to hear from you what type of structure that you're working with. Are you using an existing government site or an independent site? And you can respond to that poll here. If that doesn't quite fit, either one of those areas doesn't quite fit, then feel free to check other and then let us know in the chat. We want to hear from you what types of structures that you're using within your jurisdiction. Give folks just a little bit of time to respond. Okay. So I'm going to switch over to the results. Feel free to add any comments in the chat if you like. So it looks like it's a pretty good mix. We've got some folks that are working within their existing site and some in the independent site. We didn't have anyone that said anything outside of either of those structures. So hopefully that overview was helpful and kind of helps you think about how you can approach some enhancements based on the parameters set out by your current structure. Okay, so we've covered a lot of content so far, and I think at this point it can be kind of easy when you start thinking about enhancements to get overwhelmed. So we want to provide some opportunities to kind of keep your eye on the prize. A way to think about how you can include best practices in your child care search tool, but not get lost in the process. So one thing that we encourage is to just recognize, like we talked about in the previous slides, recognize the possibility and limitations of your website structure and associated web management processes. You should tailor your vision and your goals for your childcare search so that it can operate within the structure that you have. Before you consider adopting a new system or starting a huge system overhaul to accommodate your childcare search tool enhancements, explore the options that already exist within your structure. Talk to your IT department or your vendor about your wish list and be clear about your priorities and your requirements. You may find that the system that you already have or the structure that you're already operating within can be adapted to meet your needs. And then evaluate your resources in terms of staffing and funding. What do you have the scope and the budget to implement the enhancements that you want now? Do you need to make a short-term and a long-term plan? There may be some quick wins that you can do within your current capacity and scope that can help you kind of set the stage for long-term enhancements. Think about if there are staffing or funding resources that you haven't tapped into. Do you have some internal stakeholders that you could lean on? Can you identify new sources of funding for technological advancements or consumer education? Think outside the box a little bit. And then most importantly, I think, is to keep your audience's needs in sight. And we've said this, before, and we'll say it again, the families and the needs of the families in connecting with childcare resources is the ultimate goal of this childcare search tool. So make sure that when you start considering enhancements and you see new and bright and shiny opportunities in different areas for improvement, that you don't lose sight of the goal, which is to help improve the experience for families. Let that kind of be your North Star, and don't let the design change that vision. So with all that being said, I think it's important to remember that any enhancement is a step in the right direction. So, when you step back and you assess your childcare search tool and you come up with this dream list of 100 different enhancements that you want to make, if that happens, remember that it doesn't all have to happen in a day. Any step in the right direction is an improvement for families. Make sure that you're setting realistic goals and focus on what you can accomplish now. You don't have to do it all. Helping families to more easily find childcare that meets their specific needs is the goal, and every step towards that goal is an improvement, an enhancement, and a step in the right direction. So in the next few slides, we're going to share some ideas on how to implement enhancements to your childcare search tool. I'll talk a little bit about the process. We encourage you to consider these best practices and determine what is possible for your jurisdiction. So when you're ready to enhance your childcare search tool, make sure you take the time to research the options that are available to you and assess the needs of your stakeholders. Develop a plan that includes engaging stakeholders and determining data needs. Once you research thoroughly and develop a plan, only then are you ready to implement your enhancements in a way that's adaptable and sustainable. So as a little bit of an analogy, I don't know if any of you were in Scouts as a kid or if you spent much time outdoors, but if you did, I'm sure you remember learning how to build a fire. And maybe at the time you heard the same lesson that I did, which was to spend about 90% of your effort on preparation and 10% on lighting the match. Of course, I was a stubborn kid and I never listened. I would always pile on whatever piece of wood I could find in a mess on a wet ground, and then I'd get horribly frustrated when I could never get my fire to start with the one match that I was given. But over time, as we all do as we get older, I learned that preparation really was the key to success. So in the next few slides, we're going to talk a little bit about what you can do to light that one match fire when it comes to building your childcare search tool. How can you set the stage for implementation in a way that will set you up for success? And any project, large or small, should always start with research. This is the kindling to the fire, the stuff that catches the spark and builds into big ideas. Be sure to start your research at the source by talking to the people who will use your childcare search tool the most, which in this case is families. Ask parents which search criteria are most important to them. Find out what is working and what needs improvement by surveying the families directly. Work with providers to determine which enhancements might help them better connect directly with families. Take some time to look at some other search tools and think about what enhancements might work well for your jurisdiction. Are there features that stand out to you as exceptionally effective in connecting families with childcare? Are there examples of features that are similar to ones that you already have in place that you could easily improve or add information to work better for the families that you serve? And then perform a self-assessment on your own search tool and consider which areas could benefit the most from improvements. Think about your search tool from the perspective of a parent seeking care. Is it easy to find the information you need? Are there areas that could be clarified or new search filters that might speak better to the needs of your specific jurisdiction? For instance, would it make sense to add counties or other geographic location filters to your search in addition to required zip code based searches? If you'd like to connect with another jurisdiction, or if you'd like help thinking about these enhancements, you can always reach out to your state systems specialist for technical assistance, and they can help you find resources, examples, arrange peer-to-peer calls. They're here to help connect you with TA resources around this topic. If you want to do some of your own research, another place that you could go would be childcare.gov. And I am going to share my screen and kind of walk you through childcare.gov a little bit so you can understand how you can use it as a research tool. Okay, so childcare.gov has a couple different tabs you'll see. Childcare.gov is the national consumer education website that's supported by the Office of Child Care, and it's designed to provide families across the country with the child care information they need. So families will go to this tab here that says Find Childcare, and that's where they can go in and they can click on the first button that would link them directly to the child care search tool, or they can click on the second button and get resources within their state. There's also another tab up here at the top that is See Your State's Resources. And that will link you to another area that is very similar to what the families will see if they see Get Child Care Resources for the state. And it looks like it doesn't want to take me to that page right now, so that's fun. But if you go to this page, you can see all of the different resources that are available within the state. So there's another link to the child care search tool. There's link to child care licensing, quality care, inspection reports, criminal background checks, and regulations. So these are resources that are required for each state and then uploaded by each state. So these are state resources that you have shared or territory or tribe resources that you have shared to connect families with different resources. So this will connect you with a lot of different resources, including their main consumer education website and their search tool and monitoring inspection reports. You can use this tool to see how other jurisdictions have approached key components of their child care education website, including design features and content elements. You may be able to identify elements that may work well in your jurisdiction and incorporate that information into your consumer education website continuous improvement plan. Again, we do encourage you, if you see something that looks interesting that you're thinking about adopting, reach out to your technical assistance team and they can help you think through that process and maybe connect you with some folks that can help you make those decisions. Okay, so we have done our research, and before you can implement your enhancements, you need to have a plan. So thinking back to the fire analogy, because I love a good analogy, if the research is your kindling that catches the spark, then your plan is the firewood that's going to keep your fire burning for a long time. These are the elements that will see your big ideas all the way through to the implementation stage. As you know, projects like these can often become a bit of a Pandora's box. Once you start looking at options and inviting people to contribute to the development of a project, you might find yourself swimming in a sea of new ideas. So it's important to stick to your vision. Don't just throw wood on the fire, make a plan and stick to it. If you find that your plan is constantly changing, it may be a sign that you need to step back and reassess your vision and make sure it aligns with the needs of your stakeholders. And in this case, again, is predominantly families. Also remember that enhancements to your child care search tool will likely require provider level data. As such, you must understand your current data capabilities and determine what new data you need to support enhancements. So how will that data be incorporated into your child care search tool? And does the data already exist, or do you need to go out and collect it? Does your agency have authority over that data, or do you need to invite new partners to the table to make that happen? So again, remember that it's important to embrace an incremental approach. You don't have to do this all at once. So when you're building your plan, remember that you don't have to build your dream child care search tool overnight. Not every fire needs to be a bonfire. Set achievable goals and commit to an incremental approach. The child care search enhancement process may be more manageable when you focus on one piece at a time. Move forward incrementally when implementing your vision, pursuing enhancements that rely on required and easily accessible data first, and then expanding over time to enhancements that require data from other sources. Consider developing a long-term plan with short-term and long-term goals. So for instance, it may be helpful to batch enhancements in stages over a period of time based on your budget and your staff availability and capabilities and your technical support resources and stakeholder input. Develop and implement the highest priority changes first. So we want to hear from you again. And as you're thinking about an incremental approach to childcare search tools, I'd be curious to hear if this changes your thought process in any way. Are there any enhancements that you could consider now, kind of in the short term, for your childcare search tool? Just keeping in mind what your scope is, and if there's maybe any quick wins for you, and if you could just drop those in the chat, that would be great. So I think when we're talking to state administrators and program leaders and design, a lot of times there's the big vision, right? Here's where our search tool is now, and here's where we want it to be, and it's a totally different product, or it's just got a lot of additional bells and whistles. And so we really want to encourage you to think about, what are those small achievable wins? What are there, information buttons that you could add to some of your search criteria that would just pop up and guide the parent through a little bit more detail of the search, or ability to kind of link to some other parent resources. So thinking about the idea that your childcare search tool isn't your end-all be-all of your consumer education website, but that doesn't mean that it can't link to other resources and other systems and other areas of your consumer education website to make it a more fluid experience. So those are some, kind of smaller things that we think about when we think about an incremental approach, but it really just is based on what works for you and what's going to be a good small step in the right direction for your jurisdiction. Okay, we're going to move on for the sake of time. So now we've done our preparation by researching and planning. We've got the fire built, and it's time to light the match. So remember that this part of the process also takes skill and care. Make sure that key stakeholders are aware of your plans. Once your idea is set into motion, or once the fire is lit, you need to do some work to maintain it. Conduct user testing to see how the enhancements resonate with your target audience. Check in on your site and make sure that links are working. Do regular maintenance, make sure your data is accurate and everything is performing as it should. And then think about how families are connecting with your site. So you built this site based on the feedback of families, but now that it's up and running, is it doing what it needs to do? Are families interacting with it the way that you thought that they would? A search tool isn't useful to anyone if they can't find the search tool in the first place. So that's another thing to think about. Amy mentioned search engine optimization a little bit early in the presentation, or SEO. So think about search engine optimization. Make sure that you're using that and that families can find your site when they go to look for it. So for some of you, terms like web analytics and search engine optimization may be way out of your wheelhouse, and that's fine. That's okay. That's why we always encourage you to make sure that you have some experts at the table. I know we've got a few on the call here with us today, and that's great. That was exactly our intention. We hope that you're able to connect with these folks and reach out to your state system specialist to make sure that you're speaking with subject matter experts on when you're looking at enhancements to your system. And then finally, there are some printed resources that are available to you through the Early Childhood Technical Assistance and Training site, or the ECTAS website. And I'm going to show you some of those right now. So I'm going to do another screen share, but here's a screenshot of our consumer education page. Okay. And this is the ECTAS website. There are a million good resources here, but I do want to point out where you can find our consumer education resources. So here on the resource tab, if you go down to by topic, you can search for consumer education resources. And that is where all of our materials live. We are currently in development of an entire suite of resources around the child care search tool. And those should be posted any day now. So we really want you to come back, check out this site. They will be posted both on the consumer education resource page, and there'll probably be a feature on it in the landing page for the ECTAS website. So down here, this is where you can often find kind of new resources or priority resources for the technical assistance and training system. So we do encourage you to check out this page, keep posted, and look for resources. We've got a lot of great stuff coming out, so we're excited to share it with you. And that being said, we have a couple other resources and upcoming opportunities, and I'm going to hand it back over to Amy so she can walk you through them. And as I do that, I am going to drop a link to the ECTAS website in the chat for you.
Great, thanks. We'll give Mel just a moment to stop her screen share, and we'll go back to the slide deck. Thanks, Mel. Thanks for all the great information as well. Mel just dropped the link for the ECTAS website into the chat box there for your reference. And some of these next couple of slides that I'm going to show you have some more detailed information. Oops, we went one too many there. There we go. Listed here are the primary links for the Consumer Education Resources page available from the Office of Child Care. And again, you can navigate to those directly also by how Mel showed us on the screen share by going to the ECTAS website. And then also, thanks for that note. Hopefully this audio sounds better. Can you all hear me okay? Okay, great. Listed here are the primary links, like I said, for the Consumer Education Resources page. And when you go to the ECTAS website, you can do that by finding it under by topic and going to Consumer Education Resources that way as well. The resources contained on these sites provide guidance to states and territories as they develop and implement effective consumer education resources for families. And as Mel mentioned, there is going to be an entire suite of information for the child care search tool coming up. Some of the different key topics that we are going to have are a best practice brief related to online child care search tools, a child care search tool assessment checklist, which will really help you go through and kind of assess your search tool as it is now and ways that you can potentially enhance it. There's going to be a best practice brief, and that is referring to data collection considerations that will help support and enhance child care search. And then a couple of other tip sheets, too, related to data governance and also child care search tool enhancements. And so, like Mel said, look for those to be coming very soon to the Consumer Education Resource page. This next screen here lists some links, and it has the recordings. The links that are identified here are for a previous consumer education website series that we had last spring, from spring of 2019, and actually closed out in December of 2019. And the links presented here are some of the links from the recordings from all of those webinars, as well as resource guides specific to those webinars. And you can see here that some of the different topics include designing websites that are accessible for all families. And that one, as I mentioned earlier in the presentation, will really help you think through accessibility enhancements and making sure that the website meets the needs for all of the users that you may have in your audience. And then we've talked a couple of different times about search engine optimization. So if you are not the big tech person as it relates to your website and your child care search tool, that's a great guide to share with your IT folks or any contracting staff that you may have that helps you with your website and your search tool. And then the next link there listed there is for measuring web traffic and engagement. And then finally, the bottom one is improving consumer education websites with user research. And so, like I said, those are just a few. There are other resources available, some of which are related to branding and well as social media use for consumer engagement as well. I do see a question in the chat box about whether or not we will be sharing this PowerPoint. And yes, the presentation, the slide deck itself, will be posted on the Consumer Education Resource site, and that will be done in the very near future. It will go through the remediation process so that it can be posted. And then we will have also recorded the session, as Caroline mentioned at the beginning. So the link to the recording for today's session will be available on the website as well. So thank you so much for asking that. And then we want to reiterate, too, that all of the material that we presented today really will have a lot more detail in the Child Care Search Suite that is going to be posted soon that I mentioned the titles and the topics for. They will really allow you to kind of take a deeper dive and provide you with many more detailed tips and resources and links than we were able to go through during a virtual presentation such as this. So again, we just really hope that you will, check back and find that information, and we will also be following up from the webinar with some links that we've provided today, and we will Karen's dropped a note here, too, in the chat box for us that all of the consumer education websites are found on the childcare.gov, as Mel mentioned, and you can reach out to our team as well as if you'd like any additional walkthrough for all of the information. So, again, there's just a wealth of information, and we really hope that you'll take advantage and kind of take a look around and see what's there and watch out for the new resources that are coming soon. Okay. That said, another opportunity we want to remind you about are the next webinars in this series. The very next one is being held 2 weeks from today on August 27th. That will occur at 1:30 in the afternoon Eastern Time. The topic for that one is leveraging child care consumer education websites during emergencies and disasters, which certainly is important in the day and time that we are currently living in. We know that during times of emergencies and disasters, families as well as child care providers have specific needs for up-to-date and relevant information. And in the webinar, we're going to take some time to focus on how you can really leverage your consumer education website to communicate important information and make it the trusted source of information for child care. We'll also have some new resources related to communicating information during emergencies and disaster that we'll be sharing during that website as well. The registration link for that webinar was part of the series announcement that was sent out by the Office of Child Care at the very end of July. We'll also take just a moment here in a second. Hopefully one of my colleagues can maybe drop the link for that registration for the August 27th date in the chat box for me. And then finally, the third and final webinar in the series will be held on Thursday, September the 17th at 12 noon Eastern Time, and the focus for that one will be child care consumer education website communication strategies. And so for that one, we're going to really take a look at the different ways that you can set up a communications plan so that your website and your other means of communication with providers and families really can support each other and take advantage of other stakeholder relationships that you have to enhance your communication strategies as well. So we really hope that you can join us for these upcoming opportunities. I'm going to go ahead and, as we are beginning to close out here, we would appreciate you taking a moment to respond to the poll question that is following this slide about today's topic. So I'm going to go ahead and thanks, Mel. Mel's posted the registration for the webinar there in the chat box for those of you that are interested in the leveraging leveraging your consumer education website. That will be the one on August the 27th. And so I want to take just a moment to advance this. Oops. I'm sorry. Caroline, I think we missed a poll here. Okay. Oh, there we go. Thanks. Thank you, Caroline. So if you could take just a moment for us and let us know how much your understanding about this topic improved as a result of today's webinar. We'll give you a moment to do that. Great. Thanks for responding. We also want to take a look at and ask for you to take just a moment and think about, oops, hang on just a moment. I think we got a little out of order with our polls there. Sorry about that. We also want you to think about how likely you are to use the strategies in your future work with consumer education websites. And so I think Caroline will pull up a poll for us. There it is. Thank you. Give everybody just a moment to respond to that as well. Okay. Great. Thanks so much again for responding. And then finally, the last thing that we'd like to hear from you about, and you can just drop the information in the chat, but take just a moment, if you will, and let us know if there are any other topic areas that you would be interested in hearing more about. And again, you can just type those into the chat box. If there's something for today's presentation that you heard about that you would like some deeper information or some more resources about, feel free to do that. Or it could be any consumer education topic in general. But at this time, if you can think of any other topics that will be useful to you, please just let us know those in the chat panel. Give you just a moment to do that. Okay. You can continue to add any thoughts that you may have into the chat. We want to just thank you so much for your responses to the polls and also for your participation throughout today's webinar as we've asked you to share information in the chat box. We appreciate you joining us, and we really look forward to seeing you on the next webinar that is coming up in 2 weeks. Should you have any questions or comments following today's session, please don't hesitate to reach out to us using the contact information provided here. You can see a toll-free number as well as the Capacity Building Center general email. And again, with that, we just want to thank you again for being with us and hope that you enjoy the remainder of your week and take care. Thanks so much.